Doesn't my next guest know it? In fact, he has built an entire remarkable campaign on it. Now, with apologies to Sarah Palin, who, don't you know, is coming here. We're all very excited. There's another rock star in the grand old party, and this guy pulls off what some are calling potentially the party upset of the decade. Marco Rubio could soon be the only rock star in the grand old party. A year ago, he trailed Florida Republican Governor Charlie Crist by more than 40 points for the state's open Senate seat. Now they're about dead even, which is why politicos are dead serious following Rubio's every move and no doubt his every word this interview. With me now, Florida U.S. Senate candidate Marco Rubio. Mr. Rubio, good to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Good evening.
What do you think of the fixation on Harry Reid and what he said or meant in comments to and about Barack Obama a couple of years ago?
Well, I think everyone agrees it was unfortunate, and your lead-in kind of touched exactly about the direction this thing is going. Look, it's unfortunate he said what he did, and I'm not justifying it in any way, and clearly, when you make a career out of going after others for saying those sorts of things, you're going to be held to that standard, and that's what's happening to him right now. But in America today, we are being faced with things that are truly generational in their nature. I tell people all the time, my kids, my children and the children of those watching this program are members of the most important generation in American history. They're either going to be the most prosperous Americans ever, or they're going to be the first Americans that are going to inherit from their parents a diminished country. And those are the issues we should be focused on like a laser, because which road we go is being decided right now and over the next couple of years, and we don't like the way it's going.
Now, Mark, I've had a chance to talk to many of your Republican colleagues who say, well, if we're making a fuss over this, delays or stymies a big health care vote, so be it. What do you say?
I didn't get the last part of your question.
Well, I just think this fixation on what Harry Reid said is going to actually be good for the cause that you espouse, and that is delaying big government votes, delaying maybe or nixing votes on health care. What do you say?
Well, and they may be right from a procedural standpoint, but ultimately these sorts of ideas like health care and the stimulus package have to be defeated on the battlefield of ideas. We have to articulate to the American people why these ideas are bad, what they will mean, and then you've got to offer an alternative. You can't just go around opposing these things. You've also got to offer the alternative. And luckily, I do think there are some of those in the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. that are slowly building up this movement from within to offer clear alternatives, and I hope that's what the focus will be on here over the next 10 months.
You know, the rap against you, fairly or not, is that you're the candidate in no, the traditional type government of a Charlie Crist or what have you, or the way the Washington game is played, spending what have you, you're against, but that you stand for something people can't figure out. What do you make of that rap?
Well, I think I stand for the things that have made America great. My life experience, my dad was a bartender. My mom was a stock clerk at Kmart and a cashier. And I can tell you what allowed me to have opportunities they didn't, and that is that America was committed to limited government. That this was a nation that basically said, look, we're going to have government. We're not anarchists, and it's important that government exists to protect our fundamental rights. But beyond that, we're going to let you go out there and determine what it is you need in your own life, and then give you the opportunity to go out there and get it. And I believe that limited government has made Americans the freest and most prosperous people in all of human history. That's like the mainstream of American political thought. I think the vast majority of Americans would agree with that. And I'm just trying to give that a voice here in Florida in the U.S. Senate race.
What do you think of those who say you are closer to the Tea Party's way of thinking? That is a party, if you will, apolitical. And that you would welcome, if it came to this, a divided Republican Party, if it went back to its core, if it went back to its basic principles, even if it lost some seats in the process?
Well, I favor a united Republican Party, one that is united not behind people or an individual, but over a set of principles and ideas. See, look, when the Republican Party is the leading voice in the American political spectrum on behalf of limited government, it wins elections. When the Republican Party is about anything else, whether it's power or fundraising or trying to be more like the Democrats, Republicans lose. The vast majority of Americans believe in limited government. They don't wake up in the morning and identify themselves as conservatives or moderates. They're too busy raising children, running businesses, living their lives, but they do believe in limited government. They don't want government picking the winners and losers in our economy, and they're looking for voices in American politics. I think the Republican Party is the logical home for the limited government movement in our country. That's what I want a united Republican Party to be about. In fact, I think that's what we should be united around.
Now, Rush Limbaugh, the famous talk show host, had said that Republicans waste their time trying to be Democrat light, I think was a play on something you just said there. But another analyst had said not too long ago, moderates, we don't need no stinking moderates. Is that the Republican Party as you see it?
You know, these labels that people, I don't even know what that means necessarily sometimes, people that call themselves moderates. I know that there were those in the Republican Party who just a year ago believed and openly articulated the fact, or their belief, that the way the Republicans were going to win more elections was becoming more like the Democrats. They went around saying it, we got to be more like them. I never bought into that. We already have a Democratic Party. Why do we need two Democratic parties in America? If you want more government, if you think that spending money we don't have is the way to create jobs, if you think that government taking over the healthcare industry in this country is the way to provide people with insurance and provide them coverage, then you've already got someone to vote for. You've already got a party that speaks for you. But what about the rest of us? What about what I believe is the growing majority of Americans that do not agree with that? Don't they deserve a voice in American politics? That's what I think the Republican Party should be.
All right, so the other rap is that if we don't get health care, or even if we do, it will be incumbent upon Republicans who do get elected that their focus will be to undo everything that's been done. If you were to make it to the Senate, would your goal be to dismantle everything that has been built by Democrats and this president?
No, you know, I think that my goal would be to be a voice among many, hopefully growing number of Republicans in the Senate and in the House, and who want to see this country get back on a limited government track. In essence, that want to see this party and ultimately this country get back to those principles that have made us the freest, most prosperous people on earth. I remind everybody that to some extent that was the agenda of Ronald Reagan, was to turn back many of the mistakes that were made in the New Deal. Once again, bring government growth under control. Look, the bottom line is simple. We can argue Republicans, Democrats, moderates, conservatives, liberals. We cannot afford going forward the pace of this government growth. It will bankrupt our nation. It will condemn our children to historic and unprecedented and, quite frankly, unbearable tax rates that will resemble that of much of the other industrialized nations in Western Europe and so forth. That's not the future the majority of Americans want for their kids. They deserve for these things to be clearly articulated and genuinely represented in American politics.
Speaking of the Republican Party, do you think Michael Steele should still be leading it?
Yeah, I think he's doing a good job. You know, obviously, you know, we're not always going to agree on everything someone says. You know, that job of being a chairman is a difficult one, particularly at the national level. But I think Michael Steele is trying to kind of lead this party through a transitional period as it tries to find its voice again. And I quite frankly think that voice is to be the voice of those growing number of Americans that want this party or someone to stand up and say the direction this nation is headed is wrong. We need to get back to those things that have made Americans free and prosperous throughout our history.
Are you a global warming fanatic, seeing as half your state's freezing now?
You know, some of us here are missing the days of global warming, as we've had now almost 2 weeks of 30s in the overnight. And, you know, ultimately, really, the issue here is about energy policy. I want America to be energy independent. I think the American innovator will get us there over the long term. I think Americans have proven that if you can make money doing something, we do it better than anyone in the world. And I think you can make money by inventing and implementing energy efficiency and energy generating technologies. That's the long term. In the short term, I think America has to have at its disposal all of its energy resources.
All right. Marco Rubio, sort of an asterisk a year ago, and now a contender, as they say today. Thank you very much. Good having you.